Is the first thing that you need to do in an industry report writing is you need to define the scope of your analysis. I will try to look for a particular segment where I want to concentrate in terms of writing the report. At least 2 independent research reports with your data on the market should be consulted. This is very, very important for all of us in terms of understanding what are all the parameters, what are all the segments, what are all the factors. Good morning and welcome to the first session in Unit 5, Entrepreneurship Small Business Management, where we are going to talk about the Industry Review Report. Now, the introduction to this review report is quite interesting. Why? Because this is a hands-on project that you are going to do as a part of the syllabus. The first thing is that the industry analysis report, how should we write it? What is its importance? And why do we really harp on it to such a great extent is what we are going to see today. An industry analysis report is a document that evaluates a given industries and the companies involved in it. Often included as a part of the business plan, an industry analysis report seeks to establish how your company can gain an advantage in an industry and also by understanding the history, the trade, competitors factor. Now, basically, if you look into an industry report, the first level thought process is that we are getting a preview about how are you surviving in the market. Which means to say, the basic understanding of your existence in that business. Who are your competitors? What is your trade profile? What is your market presence? Why do we need to compete? And what are the sectors where we can see opportunities of growth? All these factors would be seen in the industry report altogether. So it's a very, very interesting factor. It's an interesting report that provides a lot of insights about your company, your presence, and how you are going to develop in the coming years. Followed by, in addition, this type of report allows the investments, bankers, and all of the concerned people in terms to understand the industry better, to understand your profile better. So after conducting a research and establishing an organizational framework, your report will be prepared to be written altogether. What we are trying to do here is that we are trying to provide a bird's eye view, rather I would even say a complete detailed eye view sometimes, where we would be able to tell the bankers, the investors, the shareholders about the company's performance, about the sectoral performance, how we can analyze it, how we can take it forward, and what are all the sectors that we need to cover. So once we have done a detailed research and an analysis completely on that, then automatically we will be able to see that how we can take this report forward, we can write that report and we can publish it so that it might be of benefit to hundreds and thousands of people in the market. Now, followed by, define the scope of your analysis. The first thing that you need to do in an industry report writing is you need to define the scope of your analysis. There are hundreds and thousands of industries available and the market is quite wide in terms of appreciating certain factors. But what are we here to do is that we will first examine the industry as a whole or an industry segment which targets a particular subset of the general market. So that's where we are coming in terms of making you understand how the entire factors, the entire segment is going to be looked into. So let me take here auto industry. So in auto industry, now when I look into the subparts, there are people who are original equipment manufacturers, there are spare part manufacturers, they are just people who are the body finish in terms of just doing it, or there are people who are auto agencies, there are people who are auto manufacturers also. So what I will try to do is that that I will try to look for a particular segment where I want to concentrate in terms of writing the report. So I am very much interested in terms of understanding how the report has to be generated, how the report has to look altogether for me. So in that sense, for example, how we have taken, you might be looking into a petrochemical industry as a whole, the entire segment, or like a US petroleum refineries, which means only one segment. So I might be looking into the auto industry itself, or I might be looking into Mahindra and Mahindra or Tata Motors, which means to say that I'm looking into a particular segment, only a particular company alone. In either case, you will have to identify the companies that offer services or similar to understand your company's factors. Now, what happens is that whether I do the entire automotive industry or I do only for Tata Motors, I need to understand their product portfolio, what is that they offer to the market, what are the different parameters under which they are working, and what is the nature and scope of the business altogether. Now, followed by, for example, if you are investigating the entire thing or a narrow niche, you need to identify the services factor very, very clearly. Now, the research of your industry will be with an independent government industry. That's what we like to look here. Government databases will contain huge volumes of statistical information on various economic sectors. Normally, for a researcher, when you want to write an industry report, we first go to those databases that are already available in the market so that we can take it and start working on it or start developing on it. But then what happens in the long run for all of us to understand our mindset is that we will try to see whether those databases are perfect, are available, are interrelated, relevant enough. So you take the government databases, for example, now you will get a huge amount of statistical information about any sector that has been probably covered. So what happens here is that for a person who's going to write that report, he is already covered with enormous amount of data. For him, the most important thing is that, let's say that I'm doing it for a United States industry statistics that could include the market or the industry analysis statistics, which has been published by the US Census itself or by the Department of Treasury, the federal stats.gov, economic indicators, and the Food and Drug Administration. Now, what happens is that I could probably go to that particular sector which is actually trying to monitor that particular aspect, that particular growth center, and then start studying about that as what is happening, what are the indicators given, what are the parameters they have taken, how they have analyzed it, how they have looked into that sector. So all these things could be probably a matter of interest to me because these sectors will be able to tell me that these are the parameters, these are the available data on which you need to look and you need to take it forward. Now, compile an independent research altogether. At least 2 independent research reports with your data on the market should be consulted. It is very easy for most of us to just copy down the data and start creating a report. But that is not expected and that is not what is being seen from your side. What we want is an independent research report data, which will be able to tell us exactly what you have done in terms of the analysis. So these 2 research report data should be published, should be presented in such a way that it has to be first consulted, it has to be edited, whatever factors that have been told has to be clearly written down there. Then we will be able to understand what is the nature of work that you have undertaken. Now, for example, if you are contacting a private data collection agencies or interest group for a published report or market analysis, which is very, very relevant for your market research to follow. So what happens here is that you take up a data factor, or you take up a situation where you are interested in terms of that particular sector. You just want to go through it and you want to publish the report, or you want to just find out the value of that analysis that has been done. Then automatically you will be able to see that your report will have a higher weightage. Why? Because you have privately collected the data, you've understood what are the different consequences, what parameters, how it has been done. So all those things can be first looked into it, and then you could probably start building up a complete data parameter, complete statistics analysis altogether. You can also consult experts within your company. Just bear in mind that their views might not be biased or unreliable. Sometimes what happens is that when you are doing a research for your own company, when you're writing your own industry analysis report, you might take the data that is available from your own colleagues, from your friends, from your people, peers, or your persons who are working as higher ups. But the only problem there, what we see is that there is a possibility that you might get a completely biased output or a data which might not be considered to be good for the analysis. So anyways, whenever we go into the analysis of this report writing, our first aim should be to see that we are able to compile an independent research report altogether. Followed by, look at the trade association data. Now, why is this important? There might be more than one trade association for your industry. Now, for instance, computer industry itself, there might be something like the Computer Communication Industry Association, Interactive Marketing, Information Systems Security Association. So now what happens is that one industry might be linked to various parameters. Like for example, in India, there might be linked to the CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry. They might be also linked to FICCI, the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. That is also possible. They might be also linked to something which is related to the NSE parameters, or to that of the BSE, or to that of the when we talk about the ASSOCHAM, which is about Associated Chambers of Commerce. So now what happens here is that the same industry is linked to various associations. So each of these will have their own database that is being talked about, or that is being predicted all about. So now what happens here is that you need to look for a stand. You need to understand the interactive parameters very, very clearly, because without that, you will not be probably able to look into the industry. You will not be able to probably understand where exactly the data is being looked out, where exactly the data is being talked about. So this is very, very important for all of us in terms of understanding what are all the parameters, what are all the segments, what are all the factors that we are looking in terms of the market. Followed by the trade association data, you need to consult the trade groups, the industry publications, to identify which can provide you background info on your industry analysis. Not all the associations that we are trying to speak about will be able to give you the same kind of data or the exact data that you are looking for. So what we tend to suggest, or what we tend to say to you, is that please look in for those kind of data, look in for those kind of parameters which will be able to provide you the exact kind of data that you are looking for. Why? Because I might be looking into some trade segment where I am getting some source of data, some Excel sheet which talks about some manufacturing capacity or their quality and factors. But the exact data does not lie in that segment or in that group. The exact data or that value might be in some other segment, in some other entity altogether. So in that case, what happens is that you will be able to see that by getting into the relevant segment, by getting into the relevant factors altogether, you will be able to get a much more consolidated data, a much more consolidated face altogether. So it's very, very important for all of us that we are able to see an exact analysis, an exact variation of what is needed and how we can take it further in terms of analysis. Consult an academic research, which is very, very important. Why? Because when you check the academic databases such as Google Scholar for a published study, research in your area of interest, that's also very important for all of us to understand at this point, at this juncture. Why? Because when you are consulting through some academic scholar-based research like Google Scholar, you will get a complete insight as how the research has been carried on. If somebody has already written a report, if somebody has already taken certain parameters, has already done some qualitative, quantitative research in that area, probably you can look into that segment altogether. The next thing is the encyclopedia of emerging industries, or the when the factors of American industry or UK or India, where you will be able to get a lot of things. Now, for example, here I have taken the Encyclopedia of American Industries, both published by Gale Research and as well as by the Britannica itself, which will be able to give a lot of importance thrust on the research as in the qualitative data factor. With this, I would like to come to the end of this session. I hope and believe that all the important factors that have been told from this particular session will be of a great value and resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we shall try to learn more about the different parameters involved in the Industry Research Report Review Committee altogether. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.